Welcome to Hanging with H2ZHW, the genre-free music and lifestyle podcast presented by H2ZHW magazine. This is the place to come to celebrate all types of music, lifestyle, and more. We are glad you have come along for the ride, so sit back and enjoy the episode.
Hey Cam.
Hey there, how you going?
Yeah, good. Seems weird that we're talking about a new album under the circumstances we're talking about it, but good to see you.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry I'm 2 or 3 minutes late.
That's okay.
Yeah, life gets in the way sometimes, but I'm here.
Lots of stuff going on.
Yeah, there is. There is.
Very important that we acknowledge the fact there is actually a new album coming out on Friday amongst all of this turmoil.
Yes, indeed.
I was kind of lucky to spend the day with you guys in the studio as it was being made, clicking away some photos and stuff. So
I remember.
I'm glad we've got them now, funnily enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
absolutely.
Damn, it's a cracking record, eh?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it's been a while for the band to make one, and I'm honoured that I happen to be sitting in the drum chair at the time of making it. And it's been a pleasure to serve these guys in that capacity in the making of this record.
So the funny thing about it is you're a man of many bands. How do you change the hat you wear depending on the band? So be it Rogue, be it Palace, be it the Jets. Like, is it just like a seamless thing for you at this point?
It's an ongoing challenge, but yeah, it's a good question because the aim is to be yourself through whatever it is that you do.
Yep.
But there has to be editing, and there has to be an understanding that you can't just bulldoze your way through everything that you do in your own style. So there's subtle shifts, and I like the variation. I need it, and I enjoy it. Having said that, I'd hate to be a session guy. I don't see myself like that. I've done a lot of session work over the years, so I've got an insight into what that would be like, and that wouldn't work. I don't think I'd be a very good, at times, session guy, because I noticed when I first come into bands, it takes me time. I'm one of those. I'm someone that takes time for me to dig deep into what I've got to do and who I've got to be. And I have peers and great friends who are incredible at making the gig really good from the first time they do it. And that's not to say I can't do that. I just tend to find that I'm not comfortable until I've had lots of time. And the thing I find is that even after a long time playing material, I seem to find a way to find more in it for myself. So it gets better.
Yep.
As opposed to, and I think that's just understanding the great part of the humanity and the of being in a band, something that is greater than the sum of its parts. So yeah, I love that. I love that. I like doing lots of things, but I like doing lots of things all at once as opposed to something different every day. That would be a bit much for me. Yeah.
I think that's what's going to set this album apart for the fans. And I'm going to be honest and say I think some of the Jets diehards might take a couple of listens, because this isn't just a steamroller from front to back. There's some really wicked elements. Like you've got like No Reason. That's got that old sort of school Jets vibe to me. Crash Out of Time, which is just straight up like a funk song with, where I can hear you laying back there, just laying back and just, letting the drums sort of have a bit of natural air there to weave in and out. So while the Jets have worn many hats in the past, I think people are going to take a bit of a listen, a couple of listens on this one. What do you think of it as the creator?
I would hope so. And I think that they would want to have more than one listen to it. I think that I've always said I think that the Jets they change their spots in it. Like, I think that they are way oversimplified as an Australian rock band. I think they're way underrated as musicians and as songwriters. And I think that they've proven time and again their capacity to reinvent themselves and forge a new aesthetics and different sound styles. Their songs so many of their songs are complicated, are complex musically and emotionally, and they've got you straight out rock and roll, stick that up your bum type songs, because it's an art form that Oz rock is built on. But I think they've got some wonderful, even in their early years, examples of having a really great and deep understanding of songwriting. And I think even that gets shown through their, as I've said many times, through their capacity to curate and choose other people's songs to cover, and doing it with, a really deep understanding of where that line is of their own version, and then paying homage to what the song originally was, and making it their own. And they've done that, whether it's, Shivers, obviously, but, Eva Destruction, amongst other, there's plenty of other examples. And on this record, I suppose we all loved the moment where Dave just said, I've got this song I wrote with someone, and he just played us live with her, and it was just like, well, there you go, that's done. That's got to go on the record. And I think that's that's a real, maybe a signpost for where Dave's heading himself in his songwriting stylings and what he sort of is wanting to bring into his own songwriting with the band. I think that the Jets are selfless in that way, that it doesn't matter whose song or what. No. I know I'm a songwriter, and I didn't want to push. I just wanted to serve these guys that have got this well-oiled muscle. I just want to be a part of that. What do you want me to do? And that was so encouraging. And, well, come on, Cam, come on. Paulie was such a beautiful man. He was such a forgiving person creatively. I can honestly tell you, I can't think of one split second in the studio, and I had plenty of time in them with him, where it was a bad fight. It just wasn't. He just brought love, and if you're having a bad moment, he supported you. If you're having, he just wanted, connection in every way, and he was across this record in every split second. He was there for all of it when it was put down, not in a domineering way, but a wanting to be present way, and it really was a Herculean effort. I can't tell you how much of effort it was for him. With the time that we had in the studio, he worked incredibly hard on these songs. Yeah, he was selfless, really was.
And I got to be a fly on the wall for that day. I know how hard he was working, because at one point he broke his glasses and refused to glue them back together. He was just a beautiful presence through the whole thing. Even if there were plenty of moments where he wasn't involved in any way, he was just there, and still a real part of the moments that he didn't even include him. He found a way to be a part of it, the fabric of every part of it. Now, I was looking at the photos just before, and there was that whiteboard that had all the tracks and where you guys are up to. So from what I can gather, there's probably about 3 or 4 that didn't make the album. Did you finish all the tracks, and are they just sort of waiting, or?
No, there were quite a few more songs that we felt were worthy. But in this day and age, with time constraints and budgetary constraints, we got to a point where we picked the 10 that we went with, and the ones that were excluded, some just weren't. We didn't feel they were right. But I reckon there would have been 4 others that were right, that were good enough, but we didn't have them far enough down the track towards finish point, and we didn't have the time to. We were on a pretty strict schedule because of vinyl and all sorts of extra external factors. We just didn't have the time to get them finished by the deadline that was looming. So they had to be. We had to trim it and just go with 10, and we thought 10's great, and they're all fantastic, and that's a totally achievable record and workload by the deadline that was set for us.
Yeah. Funnily enough, it was the song that you were working on the day I was in there that I don't think made the album. So
okay. Yeah, there were some beauties couple that there was two that I really felt strongly about, but they kind of came in late and they had that spark and fire, and it was like, oh, this is something. But yeah, we just didn't have the time.
It was the one about the car accident.
I can't think of about a car accident.
Yeah, Paulie's one.
Right. There were 3 or 4 more all he had that was.
Yeah. And the one thing I want to get across to everyone is the one thing I loved about the time I got to spend with you guys is, like you said, everyone was present. Even if they weren't working on their specific part, everyone was there. And when you hear the album, and I've given it probably 5 or 6 run-throughs now, the one thing that I take away from it is you can understand why everyone was there. Everyone feels presence on this album. It doesn't feel like it's, a singer with a couple of blokes behind him or a guitar player with a couple of blokes and a singer. It's a real band effort. And I think the Jets needed that to come out with this album, because there has been quite some time. Was there any sort of talk about how they wanted to, bring out this first album in quite a long time of originals?
No, there wasn't talk about how. It was just a lot of talk and intensity about doing it. Everyone wanted new music at the end of the day, and that's what the band is about. And it had been some time, and that's due to re-recording All for One, for example, and also, lockdown. And this album, the reason why we did all really congregate together, no matter who was doing what at a given point, it didn't matter. We wanted to be together for a period of time in the studio, regardless of what tasks there were at hand. Because we started this record in lockdown, just in an effort to just keep momentum going, and we did Appeal as an EP, and then we thought, let's start this record. I live a couple of hours drive from the producer's house, Steve James, and so I was able to get into Queensland from where I live because of the border bubble, and while Melbourne and the boys were all locked down a lot longer, we were able to get them to Paul and Scotty and everyone else were able to send us ideas, and I was able to put drums on them. And they were album drums, for the most part. A few bits and pieces that were demos, didn't work, whatever, but they had a lot of ideas that were really developed. So I was like, all right, well, whilst we're locked down, I can track the drums and I can send it back to you guys and you can work it up. And then, and that can only get you so far. So, and I think particularly for Dave's, tracking for Dave's vocal, Paulie and Steve, they all have to be in the same room for that. And we all got to be there and wanted to be there as well. So there was lots to do other than track vocals, because, you can't sing all day, every day. But that time together in the studio was a really tangible thing that we all knew had to happen to get this record finished and to get it to the quality that we'd be happy with.
Yeah. And it's funny, you talk about Dave's vocals. As someone that's seen the Jets a few times live, Dave kind of always acts the class clown on stage. And while he's intent on delivering a good performance, he's also, intent on being a good front man and connecting. Watching him cut a vocal that day, I have a newfound respect for him as a singer. He is an absolute beast in the studio. Like, just wow.
He's a beautiful singer, and the only reason I mentioned earlier too, just to finish a point about how important it was for us to have that time in the studio together, is because All for One, the re-recording we did in lockdown, and we're all separated from the entire album. So it was great for me to go through that process as well, like you, to sit back and watch Dave and Paul and Steve go through their process, and everyone, they turn around and ask you what you think. If you're in the room, you get, you're a part of it, and they're wonderful to work with, and it was great to watch. And look, I don't want to, but I've worked with a lot of singers from this era over my journey, and it's amazing how they are. I can't think of a bad singer that's been really successful. That they all have something, and because of Well, they have something unique and they've just got skills. But one thing they don't stop, whether it doesn't matter who you are, whether you Ian Moss or John Stevens or Mark, so whoever they or James Rowan or any of these people, they all tour still and play a lot. They have sung so much that they've refined an incredible ability to sing. I think a lot of them are better now than when they were young. And so it's a great gift that we keep getting to be able to see them keep going around and touring. But it means that their muscle never weakens. For some of them, are really even stronger. And Dave, obviously after 12 years on top of this, he's been singing with the Angels. So he's a busy man and he sings a lot. And you're right, as a front man, he's so professional and every show gets so much energy, crazy energy, that I agree. Sometimes his vocal ability might be something that, gets recognised second to the character and the energy that he gives. And he is a highly adept and skillful singer indeed.
Yeah. Now you mentioned Steve, the producer. I really want everyone to make sure they give this album a listen in a few different environments because the production's nuts. It's a bit of an old school vibe. I get a nice warmth through when I'm listening to it. So that's up through cans at the moment. Yeah. So when the physical's out, you got streaming, but I'm going to have the physical and go to the car with it, like you all do. Yeah. Would you agree? There's a really warm, almost not dated, but a bit of a vintage vibe.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was recorded in the way that the Jets always have. Look, it's a great studio, and Steve has been a long-time producer for the band, so the process doesn't necessarily change. And being at the helm, I suppose he has a thing that he does with the Jets. But the album was mixed by Nick DeDeer, who is an American mixer who works out of Australia now, up here in Byron Bay. Yep. We really wanted that extra layer of hands on the record, another layer of, or another set of ears, if you will, to just take it to a whole nother place, to get another perspective other than Steve and the bands. Because sometimes, it's like Steve's in the band and gets so in it and deep in it with the band. We just felt it was really important to maybe just get another outside set of ears for it to go through those. And I think it served it very well. And I think Steve's production is, is wonderfully presented by those mixes.
What was your favourite song? Now you've got the album done. What do you think is your favourite one that track you played on?
I don't have favourites. I like them all, but I suppose I have a few that stand out. I really like Nothing to Lose, the first single. I think it's so cool. And Second Chance for me is just magnificent. And at risk of sounding a bit morose, it's one of Paulie's songs, and the sentiment of it is, it's impossible, but what if someone could come back, and if they did, what would you say to them, if you had that time again? And it'll be tough for Dave to deliver that song with that sentiment now. But it's beautiful, and I really love Lie With Her. I love it. I love Throwing Shade, and I love No Reason, and I love the funky elements to the record, because the band they're a bunch of really great musicians, and they're really they really sit, particularly with Paulie. It's such a groovy bass player. That side of the band, I love that it's getting presented. On this record. There's some dancey, Paul and Steve always would get up and dance in the studio if we felt like something was starting to really gather again. If something was starting to really gather itself, and we sort of felt like, oh, this has got something, they'd all get up and dance, and quite funny. But that dancing was always a good kind of signal that things are going well here. We've got some good. So I think that element to the record, I love it. I love it.
I'd love to see Lie With Her come out as a single. I think it's the song that the Eagles would have written in 2023. It's just that good. It's so lush.
I agree.
So Paulie co-wrote 9 of the 10, or wrote on his own. Is Second Chance the one that you think represents him best on the album?
In some ways, yeah. It's a beautiful moment, and I think Paulie was never one to repeat himself. He's always, it's a really different song for the Jets and for Paul. So, he's never one to repeat himself. Always looking for vitality, and it's a very, very sad time for the band. I'm really, really cognizant of. I've been in the band 5 years now.
Yep.
And that's a reasonable stint. But, compared to Scotty, who's 16 or 17 years, and Jimmy, 26 years on and off, and Dave, from the outset, they were mates as kids and as teenagers. And I'm just really aware of how big a loss it is for them and how much time they've spent together. I'm trying my best to support them. And I think that whilst we haven't set in stone what we're going to do from here on, we have Paulie's funeral on Wednesday, so it's not a conversation as yet, but we do know one thing, that we want to honour Paul in the best way possible and in the most meaningful way possible, and that would be to get this record out, and to play some shows in his honour, and with the sentiment of gathering friends, close friends from the industry to come and play with us in Paul's place, in an effort to honour him as well. And we think that's just a beautiful concept. I do. And it makes me emotional thinking about it. And I think that there's going to be a lot of love on the stage and a lot of love in the room. And I think that that's what Paul would have wanted, if I may say. And I think that, again, it's the best and only way that we can bring some focus and attention to Paul as a person and to his legacy through his work. Because at the end of the day, he was a songwriter and a beautiful bass player. And as everybody knows, his singing was a key component to the sound of the Jets. So he was part of he was the beating heart with Dave of this band. And we can't replace that, and we're not wanting to. So we've got some wonderful friends and guests, bass players from other great bands who are deeply linked and connected to the Screaming Jets, and will be revealed when we get ourselves organised. But in this moment in time, I am having a night at home, and I'll get on a flight to Melbourne tomorrow for Wednesday's funeral and memorial to say goodbye to Paul.
Well, I know that's going to be a very well attended funeral with all of his mates, his bandmates, different musical friends. And I love the fact that the Jets are choosing to live stream it after the fact and let everyone pay their respects. I think that's a great nod, because he was a big part of a lot of people's lives, even if he probably didn't know it. So that's going to be really special. So, and I also love the fact that you guys just haven't sort of rushed and gone, oh, let's just grab insert bass player here and go out and do these dates that we've already committed to. I love the fact that you are thinking how to best make it a celebration, which I think is going to make whatever shows that you do on this upcoming run, because I don't think you're not going to be doing the entire thing that's been announced, are you?
I'm not sure. At this stage, obviously until we say goodbye and get some level of closure on this couple of weeks, on this really hard moment, and then we can move on and grieve over time. But at the moment, we're just focused on putting together a wonderful ceremony with all of his, his two sons and his family and his friends and the band. And, you just got to take it a day at a time and just focus on one thing at a time. And whilst we have the idea to do what we're going to do, how the nuts and bolts of that are all going to fit together is just stuff that is going on in the background, and there's lots of ideas. We know that that's what we'd like to do, but we just got to let these next 2 days play out, and give ourselves to them, and allow ourselves to say goodbye. And we'll be doing that for a long time. But obviously, this is the real ceremony of goodbye. So we're just trying to gather ourselves and stay present for that. I think Paul I think everyone, we've all not surprised, but blown away by just the degree of love for Paulie. And I sort of, for me, myself, as a late comer to the band, and I've known them for a long time. I did supports in my rock bands over the years, national tours with them 20 years ago with different bands that, you know, they didn't work. But, you know, I tried a few different bands over the years that didn't work. We all have to do that. And one of them was with the Jets, and even when I was a younger man, I remember Paul and Dave as just wonderfully supportive blokes, and you don't get that from headline acts a lot. They make you earn it, make it hard. They're the opposite, and I think that comes, you know, I suspect they could tell me I'm an idiot and I'm wrong, but I feel like spending a lot of time in Newcastle now, playing quite a few shows with them in their hometown, meeting their friends and their family, you know, getting you know, Dave's sister comes to gig or whatever. I just get a great insight into what it would have been like when growing up there. Paul he always points out his old house, and Dave says, oh, we used to do that there and play that show in that pub there. And I get this great insight into what Newcastle must have been like when they were young, and it was a tough place. And I don't think anyone was allowed to get too big for their boots. And I always say, Dave and Paulie never have ever gotten too big for their boots, and they treat everybody with really equal respect. And that's fans to other bands. They were really universally fantastic to everybody. So we're not surprised to see the long, far and wide reach that Paulie had with people.
And
genuinely,
the big thing is going to be the album on Friday. It's a celebration of not just the band today, not just Paul, but of how you write a good song. Yeah, because if there's a shitty song, it's not going to be on an album, you know, for the Screaming Jets. It's that simple. So I do want everyone to get it. And yeah, everyone says, go out and buy a copy. But honestly, go out and buy a copy, because the best way that you can remember Paul is to celebrate what he's done. And even the artwork's amazing. Everything's great about this album. And I think
that looks fantastic.
Yeah, I can't wait. I want to see that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, well, I know that, and I mention them all the time, but you know, the work that goes on off stage, you know, with Athel and Scott, our sound guy and stage guy, and management with Katie, it's a behemoth effort to make this album what it is, and so they have to be mentioned because they're really our members of the band, and we do this as a big travelling sort of gang and family, and I feel like I'm a part of something really meaningful, and they're wonderful human beings. And I think that the record, I will say this as a final thing about the album, is that I've listened to riffs and I watched Paul. He dragged along so much stuff. Every show he'd have extra bags, and you'd be looking at him going, why are we dragging all this stuff around? And he had his laptop and his interface and his little guitar, and he'd be up all through the night. You could hear him writing, and he really did constantly write. And I've heard these riffs and these songs, some of them come together for the years that we've been on the road, but the years that I've been on the road with the band. It's not something he just sits at home, has a few ideas and goes, oh, you know, what about this one? He'll walk in and he'll be there playing, and he'll just go, what do you think of this? You know, and it'll be all through the night. And that's just what he did and who he was. And that is why this record is the best and most vital and emotional and real human way that we can celebrate Paulie. Because if you listen to the record closely and all the different layers and different emotional aesthetics in the songs, 9 of which he co-wrote, you'll get to know Paul a lot better. Yeah.
All right, Cam, give my best to everyone on Wednesday. I'm thinking of you all. As someone that got to be that fly on the wall for that little bit of time, I know how tight you all are. So I'll be thinking of you. And should there be the revolving bass player extraordinaire of the Screaming Jets up in Brisbane again sometime this year, you know I'll be there.
Mate, we look forward to seeing you. Thank you very much.
No worries, mate. Enjoy your time with the boys, and yeah, just celebrate Paulie for everyone.
We will do that.
Thanks, mate.
Very much.
Bye.
See you, mate.
Thank you for tuning in to Hanging with H2ZHW. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and guest. Remember to add H2ZHW on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We are also on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe and hit that notification bell to keep up to date on all of our new content. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. We would love if you could take the time to write us a review and leave a comments wherever you have tuned into today's episode. This helps us reach a wider audience and create more amazing content to share with you all. We are grateful for all of your support. Until next time, you have been hanging with H2ZHW.